Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more. As a junior, attending seniors' night at the state's largest amusement park felt like a series of miracles. Volunteering for the social committee was my attempt to connect with new classmates. Initially, it seemed like a dull task. Heather, the senior overseeing graduation activities, assigned me all the grunt work while she and the others chatted away. The first miracle struck when Heather fell ill with mono just 2 weeks before the event. Being the only one familiar with the arrangements, I had to step in as the school's representative. Then came the second miracle, 2 unexpected helpers. Word spread that I could get people into the event as helpers, and I desperately needed assistance. The girls on the social committee had made it clear they were there to party, not help a junior like me. Quinn and Geminifer, juniors from a fancy private school, weren't part of the bash. With their boyfriends off to a football training camp, they volunteered to assist me. Despite having most of the work already assigned, I gladly accepted, especially considering Quinn and Geminifer were the most attractive girls I'd ever seen. The only snag was transportation. I needed the car to take the girls to the park and back, but Mom had plans for the night. We had a tradition of making deals like this, a sort of tit-for-tat arrangement. I had to come up with something significant, and after some thought, I proposed a deal I knew she wouldn't turn down. We agreed that I'd have unlimited use of the car, with gas provided, for the evening, and in return, Mom would have my full obedience for the next month. It was quite a generous offer on her part, but I really needed the car. However, I made sure to include an exception clause regarding my hair, which she had been pestering me to cut for a year. I insisted that obedience wouldn't extend to cutting my hair. To my surprise, Mom agreed. Seniors' night was a mix of blessings and curses. Initially, I had to deal with gate duties, sorting out cases of lost tickets and gate crashers. Then there were incidents of misbehavior and ejections that I had to handle, particularly when our school students were involved. We could only steal a few minutes here and there to enjoy the amusements, but Geminifer and Quinn made the most of them. Not only did they pitch in when there was work, but they also treated me with great friendliness during our brief breaks for amusement. It was all in good fun, of course. How could they genuinely be interested in someone like me? Nonetheless, I cherished those moments, and we shared some laughs. We were having such a good time that someone took the time to warn me about their boyfriends not approving of their friendliness. But their boyfriends were miles away at a football camp, and their school wasn't even participating, so how would they find out? It seems reality has a way of balancing out the miracles in life. My payback began shortly after the bash, just as vacation started. Mom called from work, instructing me to tidy up and meet her at the curb upon her arrival home. We had some errands downtown. Reluctantly, as I hadn't yet begun my summer job hunt, I cleaned up and awaited her arrival. As she pulled up to the curb, I hopped in, and we headed toward the boulevard leading across town. Curious, I inquired about our destination, and she glanced at me before starting to speak. "Jonas, I've been reflecting on the conflicts we've had lately. I realize it's been tough for you. The divorce, moving, adjusting to a new school. I haven't been fair to you." Her tone was surprisingly gentle, a departure from the constant scrutiny since the divorce proceedings began. I grew wary. I've come to understand that much of the tension is my fault. When Mom began by admitting fault, I knew she had an agenda. "It's not just about your long hair bothering me, it's more about its upkeep." Ah, here it comes. She was going to exploit a loophole to persuade me to cut my hair. But I held my ground, knowing our agreement was firm. "I suppose I've expected you to know how to maintain your hair neatly without proper guidance, which may not be fair. When I was your age, my mother taught me how to care for my hair, how often to wash it, how to style and manage it. We spent hours together, enjoying each other's company while grooming. It was pleasant, unlike the conflicts we've had. I see no reason why we shouldn't make it enjoyable for both of us." Her proposal sounded unexpectedly reasonable,
but I remained cautious. I'd like to change my approach, to take more responsibility in teaching you what you need to know and to make it enjoyable for both of us. Would that be all right with you? I had to admit, our disagreements about my hair had been far from enjoyable, and I appreciated Mom acknowledging her part in it. It was true, I struggled to manage my hair effectively. As it grew longer, it became greasy all the time. Washing it only made it wispy and unmanageable, and tangles were becoming a real nuisance. I had wanted to seek Mom's help, but I feared she'd just use it as another reason to hassle me. Now, she was offering the assistance I'd been seeking. How could I refuse? Actually, Mom, I've been dealing with some serious tangle issues lately, and I was going to ask if you had any advice. I just didn't want it to turn into a lecture or a demand to cut my hair, you know? Sweetheart, I'm glad you shared that with me. I've decided that, considering changing styles, if you genuinely want to keep your hair long, I shouldn't object, as long as you keep it well-groomed. Would you let me assist you with that? Of course. I'd really appreciate that. The only challenge is, with my job demanding more of my time, I may not be able to dedicate as much time initially. Eventually, you'll be able to manage most things on your own, but in the beginning, you might need more help than I can provide. What could be so difficult? You manage your long hair just fine with only a few minutes a day. Well, my style is relatively easy to maintain, but I'm not sure if you'd prefer the same. Even seemingly simple styles require more time than you realize. You may not be aware of the salon visits and nightly routines. Rest assured, managing your hair, especially as it gets longer, will require time and effort. Are you prepared to invest that? I suppose so, but if you're already dedicating time to your hair, will you have enough to assist with mine? Unknowingly, I was walking right into Mom's plan. As I mentioned, initially, you may need more assistance than I can offer. That's why I've arranged for Betty to help you get started. That's where we're headed now. Betty had been one of the first people to welcome us when we moved. Mom had been referred to Betty's salon, where she not only did an excellent job on Mom's hair but also became a friend. Unlike many adults, Betty had taken an interest in me and seemed genuinely interested in building a friendship with both Mom and me. Gosh, that's really kind of her to offer. I don't think I've ever been to her place before. Betty truly is a wonderful friend, but I didn't want to presume on her professional expertise or hospitality, so I arranged this as more of a business arrangement. I've booked appointments for you at Betty's salon every Monday night this month. Tonight marks the first one. Mom, there's no way I'm stepping into a salon with all those women around. I know you used to take me along sometimes, but I'm not a little kid anymore. Plus, what if someone I know sees me? Relax, sweetheart. I understand your concerns, and so does Betty. Her salon closes early on Monday nights, but she's agreed to stay open late for these appointments to ensure you're comfortable without others around. Not only that, she's offering us a half-price discount on all services and products. Wow, that's incredibly generous of her. I'm sorry, Mom, I didn't mean to overreact. She had put me on the defensive, and I still had no inkling of her plan. No need to apologize, my dear. I've tried my best to consider both your feelings and mine. I want us to enjoy this, so I've kept the rules to a minimum, just 2, in fact. My suspicions resurfaced. What do you mean by rules? Well, this is your part of the agreement, to abide by my wishes for the month after you got the car privileges, right? Well, my wishes are simple. Keep your hair clean and well-groomed at all times for the next month, and keep it off your collar when I'm present. That's not too much to ask, is it? Mom, your part of the agreement was that you wouldn't force me to cut my hair. Wasn't this whole conversation about learning to manage my long hair? Exactly, dear. I never mentioned cutting your hair. But Mom, how can I keep my hair off my collar without cutting it? That's straight out of the old high school dress code. This isn't about old dress codes, and long hair will be acceptable in high school again this fall. I want you to keep it off your collar as a way to learn proper management at that length. Betty can teach you various ways to style it away from your collar. Style it? You mean put it up, Like a girl's? Mom, you can't be serious. You're raising your voice again, sweetheart. I mean, put it up as in having the skills to keep long hair neat and presentable. Once you've done that for a month, I'm confident you'll be able to manage it on your own, regardless of length or style. And as I said, I'll assist you as much as possible, along with what you learn from Betty. Now I could see the cunning trap she had set. Technically, I had agreed to comply with any demand she made, though I never imagined she'd come up with something like this. There's no way I'm going to wear my hair like a girl's for the next month. I couldn't even leave the house. I refuse. That's your decision, my dear. If that's how you feel, simply ask Betty for a regular boy's cut, and we'll be done with it. But if you truly believe the arguments you've presented to me, wearing your hair up shouldn't be any more feminine than wearing it long. Additionally, you're free to style your hair however you like when I'm not around. I can't dictate that. It's only when we're together at home that I request it to be up. If you demonstrate that you've mastered hair management before the month ends, I might relax the requirements. Now, here's Betty's salon, and we're already running late, so please hurry inside. I'll return around the time you're finished. I have errands to run. Glancing around to ensure no one recognized me, I quickly exited the car, slammed the door, and dashed into the salon. Though I was seething, Betty greeted me warmly and directed me to the chair farthest from the windows. Your mood tells me your mom has briefed you on her rules. She explained her plan over the phone yesterday. You must be pretty upset, huh? She's devised her little scheme, Betty, thinking she'll convince me to cut my hair. But I'll find a way out of this. Well, Jonas, I don't want to take sides. You and your mother are both dear friends, but there's a bit of a compromise here if you're patient and truly committed to keeping your long hair. I'm more determined than ever. Betty chuckled. You're just as stubborn as your mother, it seems. That's one trait I admire about both of you. You're resolute in pursuing your desires. Now, let's get down to business. I assume you haven't had much experience with styling your hair or using curlers, have you? I glanced at her skeptically. You must be joking. I thought as much, but I wanted to confirm. Her tone suggested she would have preferred otherwise. If you had some experience, we could opt for a simple French roll or a style that you could easily undo and redo. You'll develop those skills over the next couple of weeks. However, for now, we need a style that will hold for several days. My only available time this week is Friday morning, so we'll create a style that can be cemented in place, something you can maintain with just hairspray and pins each morning. On Friday, after your mom leaves for work, you can wash it. If you struggle to put it back up, give me a call, and I'll assist you. How does that sound? I probably sounded quite whiny as I replied, unintentionally. So, you're saying I'd have my hair up like a girl's until Friday morning? I'd be stuck at home. I'd go stir-crazy. Betty kept her voice low, but there was a firmness in it, signaling her dwindling patience. I understand it may seem difficult for you, but it's the best way I can see to assist you. If you prefer, we can simply abandon this and give you a standard boy's cut. Feeling embarrassed for upsetting Betty and realizing I was backed into a corner, I resolved to push back. No, I won't give in. Just tell me what you need me to do. Betty smiled and offered a friendly hug. Come now, it won't be as terrible as you think. I bet you a milkshake that by the end of this month, you'll wonder why you made such a fuss. I couldn't help but grin. You're on. Double chocolate malted it is. All right, wise guy, deal. Betty retrieved 2 picture albums from a nearby shelf. Take a look through these albums and choose a style you like. I believe any of these will suit our needs. Meanwhile, I'll prepare my tools. As I flipped through the albums, my spirits sank. Each model sported elaborate updos, adorned with ribbons, curls, or decorative combs. Some even featured flowers woven into the style. It was evident that maintaining my dignity over the next few days would be a challenge. I was about to receive a girl's hairstyle. For a moment, I contemplated giving in and requesting a boy's cut. But as I envisioned my hair strewn across Betty's floor, A shiver ran down my spine. I had fought for the right to wear my hair long, not only with Mom and the school principal but also against several peers who equated long hair with weakness. I felt deeply invested in it. The thought of Mom's triumphant smile upon returning to find me with short hair was the final straw. Swallowing hard, I approached Betty with the album. With grim determination, I pointed to one of the styles she had suggested as the simplest. I had seen it on several female classmates at prom, all the hair swept up to the crown, then arranged in 2 tiers of ringlets, one atop the other. I thought I detected a hint of sympathy in Betty's eyes, but she greeted me cheerfully and gestured to the salon chair where I was to sit. Strangely, as soon as I made the decision, I began to relax. Betty's effortless conversation soon had me smiling and even enjoying myself. As she started washing my hair, memories flooded back of accompanying Mom to her beauty appointments. I'd typically sit up front with a toy or comic book, absorbing the unfamiliar scents and the chatter of female voices. Sometimes, I'd peek over the divider and observe as Mom and the other women endured the curlers and various gadgets. They were always kind to me, occasionally teasing about returning for a hair treatment. It was surreal to realize those memories were now becoming a present reality. A strange sensation gripped my stomach, intensifying along with a tightness in my chest as Betty combed through my wet hair, separated strands, and began winding them into curlers. "But I don't want curls, Betty. Can't I just leave it straight? Every time you wash your hair, Jonas, you're essentially curling it, whether you wear it curly or straight. Larger curlers like these provide a bit of volume and control. If you truly prefer straight hair, we can use smaller curlers." She didn't pause for my response. "I'll give you a set of these larger ones to take home tonight, so you'll have them ready Friday morning. I'll be on hand to assist if you forget what I'm about to show you." As she placed each curler, she directed me to hand her the hairpins to secure them. After a few, she handed me the comb. "Since eventually, you'll need to do this yourself, might as well start learning now, I suppose." It was a nearly hour-long process, and my arms grew weary, but I gradually caught on, sectioning hair, winding curlers, and pinning them in place. Betty offered guidance on how to position the curlers for the desired effect. When we finished, she wrapped my head in a net and led me to one of the dryers. I felt absurd, but no more so than any woman I'd seen in a similar situation. Betty positioned me beneath the dryer and, before switching it on, asked if I'd like a manicure while my hair dried. "No chance you're painting my nails, Betty." Betty chuckled. "Manicures don't necessarily involve nail polish, silly. I have several male clients who regularly get manicures to maintain neat hands, even Mayor Frost." The image of Mayor Frost in Betty's chair amused me, but Betty eventually convinced me it was all right, certainly better than leafing through the women's magazines scattered about. After my hair dried, I followed Betty back to the styling chair. A peculiar tightness gripped my chest as I observed her removing the curlers. Despite her assurance that the large curlers would result in straight hair, each strand emerged with a lively curl at the end. I wanted to voice my dissatisfaction, but I found myself too captivated to speak. The abundance of curls in my hair strangely excited me. It reminded me of the thrill I felt when I used to try on Mom's belongings. I abruptly halted that train of thought. It had been weeks since I decided to put an end to such behavior. After all, I was a guy now, too mature for such antics. Nevertheless, I couldn't completely suppress the lingering sensations as Betty combed, teased, sprayed, and piled my hair atop my head. Using large hairpins, she secured the strands until the entire mass was assembled. Then, she employed an elastic fastener to gather it all together. With a curling iron, she fashioned small, flat curls and pinned them in a circle around the crown of my head. When she finished, she informed me she'd returned shortly and disappeared into the back of the shop. I stared at my reflection in the mirror for a long moment. The undeniable femininity of the hairstyle and its impact on my appearance was unmistakable. My resistance to the excitement brewing within me swiftly diminished. On a whim, I lifted my newly manicured fingers to my chin, flashed a smile at myself, and struck a girlish pose. For a fleeting moment, I even regretted declining Betty's offer of clear nail polish. It was precisely then that Betty re-entered the room. Hastily, I abandoned my pose and settled back into my seat. Betty said nothing but sported a subtle knowing smile as she resumed her work. She procured a small hairpiece that matched my hair color and skillfully fashioned it into a second tier of curls, which she added atop the first. "Betty, is that really necessary?" I questioned with half-hearted protest. "Not entirely, but would you deny an artist the pleasure of completing her masterpiece?" Her broad smile and playful wink were infectious, and I found myself smiling despite my reservations. Betty was indeed a cherished friend, and I had no desire to upset her, especially not now when I relied on her assistance. After Betty finished with the hairpiece, she instructed me to cover my face while she liberally coated the entire arrangement with what felt like half a can of hairspray. I unveiled my face just as Mom entered the shop. "Oh, Betty, he looks stunning. I mean, his hair looks perfect." Instantly, my anger resurfaced. On one hand, I was intrigued by my new hairstyle, but on the other hand, I seethed with frustration towards Mom for maneuvering me into this situation. I offered no response as Mom greeted me, and I feigned disinterest as Betty packed several items into a bag and outlined the necessary steps for the next few days. The following days were absolute torture. Firstly, I refused to engage in conversation with Mom. She would leave extensive lists of chores for me, including preparing dinner every evening for her return. I was so adamant about not speaking to her that I didn't even bother arguing. After all, it was all part of my agreed-upon month of obedience, so arguing would have been futile. With my hair pinned up, I wouldn't even step outside, not even in our own yard, for fear that the neighbors might catch a glimpse of me. My hairstyle caused a myriad of issues beyond just confinement. Every evening, I had to spend extra time spraying my hair all over and securing it in a net to ensure it survived the night. There was no comfortable position for my head as I attempted to sleep, resulting in restless nights filled with tossing and turning. Each morning, I had to rise early, remove the net, repin any loose strands, spray it again, and then present myself to Mom at breakfast. Despite her cheerful demeanor and complimentary remarks, I remained unresponsive. During brief breaks from chores throughout the day, old urges would resurface. It was typically during these moments that I found myself sitting at Mom's dressing table, contemplating my reflection in the mirror. I was attempting to see myself from the outside, pondering what others might think if they saw me like this. However, for the most part, those initial days were characterized by chores and silence. By Thursday morning, after Mom had departed, I reached my breaking point with the sticky, drooping mass atop my head. I was nearly at the brink of shaving my head bald simply to attain a decent night's sleep and to escape the confines of the house for a while. Perhaps I could manage the curling and styling myself. How difficult could it be? I roughly removed the pins from my hair, then indulged in a long, hot shower, following Betty's instructions to wash and condition my hair. Afterward, I retrieved all the products Betty had sold us that first night, laid them out on Mom's dresser, and commenced putting curlers in my hair. However, it quickly turned into a disaster. As soon as I placed a few curlers, one would inevitably fall out. Stooping to retrieve the fallen curler would cause the others to loosen and flop around. After about 15 minutes of this frustration, I found myself in tears. I dialed Betty's number at the salon, and thankfully, she was available. Despite the day being slower than anticipated, she kindly offered to come over immediately, an offer I eagerly accepted. Betty greeted me warmly at the door, instantly lifting my spirits. Within minutes, she had me sectioning off my hair and expertly placing the curlers as if I had been doing it my entire life. Not only that, but she also had me laughing and chatting with her throughout. Before I knew it, my hair was dry, and Betty was assisting me in brushing it out. She taught me how to fashion a simple bun at the back of my head, ensuring I could replicate it myself. Then, she produced a couple of items from her handbag she called chignon covers and demonstrated how to pin them over the bun, explaining that they would contain any loose ends that might otherwise protrude. While I initially doubted their necessity, Betty reminded me that Mom would be exceptionally particular about such details and would insist that my hair look flawless whenever she was present. Once Betty felt confident in my ability to manage the bun and covers, she kindly offered to drop me off anywhere on her way back to work. By this point, I was feeling completely restless and eagerly accepted her offer. She suggested I could wander around the mall opposite her shop, and she would pick me up when I was ready to return home. Delighted by the prospect, I bid her farewell and strolled toward the mall entrance. Catching my reflection in the doorway, I was pleased to see that my hair was nearly straight now, cleaner than usual, and perhaps a bit fuller, but overall resembling its appearance from a week ago. I leisurely browsed through the music store's selection of tapes for a while. "May I assist you, miss?" The voice initially went unnoticed, but upon seeing the clerk looking directly at me, I was taken aback. "Excuse me, miss, are you looking for something specific?" It dawned on me that he was genuinely addressing me. Although tempted to respond sarcastically, I was struck by the sincerity in his tone. Shaking my head, I swiftly exited the store. As I approached a department store entrance, a girl offered me a spritz of a new perfume. Ignoring her, I hastened my pace, feeling a lightness in my head and a quickening of my heart. Seeking refuge, I retreated to a secluded bench in a back corner of the mall, taking time to calm my breathing and racing heartbeat. What was happening? While it wasn't uncommon for me to be mistaken for a girl in the past, especially when wearing a hood or cap, those instances were mostly behind me. Relatives occasionally referred to me as Babyface, but only the adults who overlooked my response to the nickname. Although I had been teased since growing out my hair, those incidents ceased after a few confrontations. This, however, was different. These people weren't teasing, they were being polite. For some inexplicable reason, 3 individuals had mistaken a teenage boy for a girl. I scrutinized my reflection in a nearby store window. Clad in loose jeans, a baggy shirt, and white tennis shoes, my attire wasn't much of a factor either way. It had to be my hair. Perhaps it did curl slightly at the ends, and it did feel a bit fuller, but was that enough to cause a difference? Somehow, with the subtle effects of the washing, conditioning, and curling, something had shifted. It felt as though I had crossed some invisible threshold that altered the way people perceived me. I needed to discuss this with someone, and Betty was conveniently just across the street. Observing Betty engrossed in conversation with a client, I briskly walked past the receptionist's desk without uttering a word. "Excuse me, miss, but you can't go in there without." "Betty, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I need to talk to you right now," I whispered urgently. Betty graciously excused herself and led me into her office, closing the door behind us. "Jonas, you look like you've seen a ghost." "What on earth is wrong?" she inquired. I swiftly recounted my recent experiences. "Well, I suppose I can grasp your sentiments, but I'm not particularly surprised. I understand how sensitive you are about this, Jonas, but you possess very delicate features and a genuinely attractive face. With your hair as lengthy as it is now, and appearing so well kept, it's only natural that people perceive you that way." I took a moment to absorb her words. Betty had essentially conveyed, with utmost tact, "You resemble a girl." These were the same words that had resulted in more than one brawl among my peers, but Betty was an adult, and moreover, I knew her sincerity. "But, Betty, what can I do about it? What do you want to do about it?" By now, I was thoroughly bewildered and frustrated. While Betty seemed to comprehend, she wasn't offering much guidance. I sat there, a blank expression on my face. What options did I have? I could chop off my hair, but that would signify surrender, an option I vehemently rejected. Furthermore, I genuinely enjoyed having long hair. I relished the way it swayed as I walked and the sensation of running my fingers through it, as I was doing at that moment. Reverting to keeping it unwashed and unkempt after all this seemed like a meager option too. Observing me for a few moments, Betty finally smiled. "There is one straightforward solution I can envisage." I perked up a bit, glancing at her hopefully. You could simply go along with the situation and allow people to think what they will. We could turn it into a sort of game, or an experiment, to see how much you can get away with. It took me a moment to comprehend what Betty was proposing. You mean, pretend I truly am a girl? Come on, Betty. Why not, Jonas? It could be amusing, testing how many gullible individuals you can deceive. Yeah, until the first one catches on and spreads the word. Then where would I be? Well, there is a risk, I admit, but I believe it's rather minimal. Particularly since you know so few people around here anyway. I regarded her skeptically. Tell you what, let's conduct a little experiment. I wager that I can take you shopping right now, passing you off as my niece or something, and not one person will uncover our secret. Oh, come now, Betty. All it takes is for me to say something or even stand the wrong way, and anyone will see right through it. You might not believe it, but there are thousands of girls your age with a deeper voice than yours. Besides, if you prefer, I can do all the talking. What do you say? Shall we put another double chocolate malted on the line? Initially, I couldn't believe Betty was serious, but the more I pondered it, the more intrigued I became. I had always wondered what I would look like as a girl, and now it seemed like I was about to find out. Why not let Betty assist? Plus, she had thrown down the gauntlet. I always enjoyed a friendly wager. All right, Betty, you're on, but I don't have to wear a dress or anything, do I? Not if you don't want to, dear. She paused, as if awaiting my response to her implication. I will need to do a little touch-up, though. Sit over here at my desk, and I'll be right back. Betty stepped out of her office briefly, returning with a brush and a few other items. Now, I'm just going to put your hair up like we did this morning. She began to brush my hair back, chatting as she worked. But we'll brush it back over your ears to soften the look a little more. After finishing, she opened her purse and then took hold of my chin. Now, look down for a moment, that's it. Now, look at the ceiling, try not to blink. Very good, now look down again. I felt gentle strokes at my lashes and over my eyelids, realizing she was applying some of her makeup on me. I started to pull away, but she tightened her grip on my chin. Not yet, Jonas. Let me finish, and then you can see what you think. Now, part your lips a little, that's it. A sweet taste filled my mouth as she ran a brush around my lips, then filled them in. Now, rub your lips together. That's it. Now, blot. Now, part your lips again. The taste was reminiscent of raspberries, triggering a powerful surge within me. My chest tightened, and other feelings surged, ones I preferred not to acknowledge. Memories of salon trips and glimpses of Mom's lingerie drawer raced through my mind. It took all my effort to ground myself back to reality. Betty lightly brushed my cheeks, then blended with her fingertips. There, now you can take a look in the mirror. What do you think? She turned the chair around to face the full-length mirror behind her door. When I stood up, I felt so dizzy I had to clutch Betty's arm to steady myself. The body in the mirror was unmistakably mine, yet there were subtle differences in the face, the darker eyes, the pink cheeks and lips. It was still my face, I suppose, only pretty. Wow, I managed to say as I struggled to regulate my breathing. Well, young lady, are you ready to lose that bet? I made a wry face at her, but my legs felt like lead. Betty took my hand, intertwining our fingers, and led me out the door. Come on, this is going to be fun. Grace, I'll be out for an hour or two, but I'll be back before Mrs. Valles comes in for her appointment, Betty informed the receptionist. The receptionist nodded at Betty, then shot me a look when Betty turned away. I couldn't resist making a face back, and oddly enough, it bolstered my courage for what I was about to do. I ended up losing the bet. Over those 2 hours, we visited nearly every women's shop and department in the mall, and not a single person even hinted that I might be a boy. Initially, at the first few places, we merely walked through while Betty discussed the latest fashions and styles, color combinations, and accessories. Later, I realized she was giving me time to acclimate to the situation. Everyone we passed offered nothing more than a smile, though a few greeted Betty by name. Slowly, I began to believe I was genuinely passing as a girl. Betty subtly pointed this out to me several times, assuring me it was going to be effortless and a lot of fun. In the next shop, we stopped to peruse the racks of women's clothing. Betty held out several items she liked and asked for my opinion. Skillfully, she involved me in the conversation, and soon I was laughing and chatting along with her. Betty frequently praised my taste and fashion sense, and I found myself freely sharing my thoughts on everything from fabrics to jewelry. We entered some shops where Betty was well known, and she introduced me as her niece from out of town. The women were all very friendly to me, and I began to thoroughly enjoy myself. It was exhilarating, browsing through vibrant colors and soft fabrics, admiring beautiful jewelry, and sampling the scents of perfumes and makeup. Betty was careful not to push too far, and she never suggested I try anything on, but she did encourage me to experiment with some eyeshadow and a couple of lipsticks at one of the makeup counters. By the time it was time to leave, I realized how exhausted I was, yet I was almost reluctant for it all to end. Betty helped me remove the makeup back at her shop before driving me home. I thanked her for the wonderful afternoon, and she gave me a warm hug before I got out of the car. "Maybe we can do this again next week, and you can buy me that double malted you owe me," she teased. Laughingly acknowledging my loss of the bet, I readily agreed to another shopping excursion. I struggled to put together dinner before Mom arrived home, but my good mood persisted. Strangely, Mom didn't comment on the chores I hadn't completed, and she even complimented me on the meal. In a casual tone, she asked about my day, and I held my breath, anticipating her questions and planning my responses. Thankfully, she simply remarked on Betty's kindness and then talked about her own busy schedule for the next few days. It was the first normal conversation we'd had in a while. That, coupled with a good night's sleep, marked a turning point for me. The next morning, I found myself humming a tune as I brushed my hair back and fashioned it into a chignon. During breakfast, I apologized to Mom for my earlier surliness, and she apologized to me for being so strict about our agreement. She didn't modify any rules but did relax the list of chores. We shared a genuine hug and a kiss, our first in a while, before she hurried off. After she left, I entered her room and sat at her dresser, undoing my hair. As I brushed it out, I noticed a tube of lipstick. A sudden urge came over me, and I opened the tube, looking into the mirror. Mimicking the day before, I applied the lipstick to my upper lip, feeling a slightly different yet sweet taste. I dabbed some on my cheeks and smudged them like Betty had. Finding my mom's eyeshadow, I swiped it across each eyelid. Feeling daring, I attempted to use her mascara, though I poked my eye twice and had to clean up smudges. Despite using black instead of brown like Betty did, I was satisfied with my makeup. I styled my hair, holding it up and making faces at the mirror. As I smiled, I realized I could truly pull this off. After securing my hair with an elastic, I contemplated if Betty had suggested something similar before and if I would have agreed. The thought of future shopping trips with her excited me. How could I wait until then? Now I was almost like a robot. I didn't let myself think about past promises as I began opening Mom's drawers and searching through her lingerie. I found one of her half-slips and rubbed it against my face, as I had done so many times before. Still not allowing myself to think about what I was doing, I took off all my clothes and dropped them in a pile. I took out a pair of Mom's panties and pulled them on, then stepped into the half-slip. Trying to put on a bra was very frustrating, but I told myself I had all day if necessary. Finally I got it snapped behind my back and adjusted pretty well. Avoiding the mirror for now, I headed to Mom's closet. With the house all to myself, I had plenty of time until Mom returned. It felt liberating and weightless. I opted for a grey pleated skirt and a white blouse with ruffled sleeves. Despite the front buttons, I noticed they were on the opposite side, requiring a few extra moments to fasten. Finally facing the mirror, I pondered if my appearance matched my inner satisfaction. Embracing myself, I savored the luxurious feel of the silky fabric against my skin. As I lowered my arms, I noticed the blouse didn't quite complement the empty brassiere underneath. Returning to Mom's lingerie drawer, I retrieved several pairs of stockings to fill the bra cups. After toning my blouse, I held up one of the pairs of pantyhose, contemplating whether to proceed. Just then, the doorbell interrupted my thoughts. I stood frozen, pondering my options. Panic set in, someone would catch me, but then it dawned on me. This was my house, I could simply wait until they departed. Sneaking to the front door, I peered through a side window. A delivery boy stood outside with a package and clipboard. I anticipated his departure, but he lingered, ringing the bell and knocking loudly. Impatient and slightly irritated, I waited for what felt like an eternity. Why wouldn't he just leave? Then a mischievous idea crossed my mind. If I could deceive a group of women yesterday, could I pull off the same with this young man? Returning to the doorway, I swung it open just as he knocked again. A breeze brushed against my bare legs, sending shivers down my spine. I instinctively covered my chest, affecting a hoarse voice, and whispered, "Yes?" The door handle seemed to be the only thing preventing me from fainting at that moment. "Excuse me, Mrs. Anderson," the boy inquired. Maybe I resembled a girl, but definitely not a Mrs. This guy seemed clueless. Glancing at the package, I spotted the street number on the label. 3 doors down, I whispered. What? How could someone annoy me so quickly? Clearing my throat, I used my normal voice. "The Andersons live 3 doors down," I stated loudly, then shut the door in his face as he fumbled with his clipboard. Did he realize I was male, or was he just clumsy? Peeking out the window, I saw him retrieving his clipboard. As he descended the steps, he muttered something that sounded like "nice pillows." It took a moment, then I looked at my chest and burst into laughter. I had overfilled the bra cups with stockings. I probably looked like a double D to that delivery boy. I adjusted my appearance in Mom's room, deciding against wearing her pantyhose to avoid any mishaps. I spent the day in Mom's attire, attending to chores and occasionally freshening my makeup and hairstyle. An hour before Mom's expected return, I carefully returned her clothes, scrubbed off my makeup, then impulsively retrieved an old babydoll nightie from her drawer. After hiding it under my pillow, I prepared dinner. Mom praised the meal and complimented my hairstyling progress. Our conversation drifted to tips Betty had shared, leading to a pleasant discussion on hairstyles and fashion. That night, after Mom retired, I exchanged my pajamas for the babydoll nightie. Unsure of my motives, it somehow felt comforting, like a connection with Mom. Reflecting on our conversation, I drifted off to sleep with a smile. Saturday and Sunday seemed filled with chores. Our conversation drifted to hairstyles, and Mom asked about my choice for Monday's appointment. Before I realized it, we were sitting together on the sofa, flipping through one of Mom's magazines. Initially discussing hairstyles, our conversation expanded to fashion and women's issues. Mom shared anecdotes from her past job, and we even touched on the topic of divorce. Falling asleep Sunday night, I couldn't help but think Mom's new approach was surpassing my expectations. Monday afternoon, sporting the familiar chignon hairstyle, I waited for Mom on the porch as she arrived. This time, Mom accompanied me to Betty's shop. "Hi, Jonas. Hi, Liz. Good to see you both. Are you back on speaking terms?" Betty teased with a smile, grabbing an album from her shelf. "Here, Jonas, take a look and see if you find a style you like." "Oh, we've already sorted that out, haven't we, Jonas?" Mom chimed in. Blushing slightly, I nodded and pointed to the magazine picture I had brought. "The Gibson girl. Perfect choice. Sophisticated yet easy to manage," Betty exclaimed. "Do you think a body perm will be necessary, Betty?" Mom inquired, catching me off guard as we hadn't discussed it during style selection. Possibly. We'll start with a bit of extra setting gel and see how it goes," Betty suggested. "All right then, I'll leave him in your capable hands. See you shortly," Mom said, exiting the shop. Settling into the shampoo chair, I began my routine with Betty. By now, I was proficient with the curlers, needing only guidance on the setting pattern. Betty commended my progress and treated me to another manicure, which this time included a clear coat of polish. Once my hair was dry, Betty styled it into a sophisticated updo, offering tips along the way. Admiring the final result in the mirror, Betty added subtle touches by delicately pulling out strands of hair around my temples and neck. "Betty, do we really need to go that far?" I questioned, somewhat hesitantly. "I don't plan on showing this off anywhere, you know." I noticed she was meticulously crafting those delicate wispy tendrils, mimicking the hairstyle from the magazine. "I just want to ensure you and your mom get your money's worth, Jonas. These finishing touches distinguish a professional hairstyle from a DIY job," Betty explained with a wink in the mirror. "Plus, I thought you might enjoy a bit of attention when we go shopping together this week." Her mention of our upcoming shopping excursion made my stomach churn. Last week's browsing in the women's departments had been enjoyable, but how far would she push me this time? The anticipation left me silent as Betty finished curling the tendrils, resulting in a polished look that we admired in the mirror for several minutes. A voice in my head whispered that I shouldn't derive so much pleasure from styling my hair so femininely, but I couldn't resist. Next, Betty guided me through dismantling the hairstyle twice, then reconstructing it from scratch. She praised my progress, deciding to stop after the second attempt. Mom entered just as I finished applying the final spritz of hairspray. Betty insisted on redoing the tendrils, and as Mom and she observed, I delicately crafted them with a small hook, feeling a twinge of embarrassment at adding such a feminine touch to my hair. Mom also noticed the clear polish on my nails. "I see you did his nails too. Betty, you do such a professional job, and it really enhances his hands. I'll have to come in for a manicure soon," Mom remarked, scanning the salon's changes. "My, you've expanded quite a bit, haven't you? What's that table next to your manicure station?" "Oh, that's my cosmetology setup," Betty explained. "I just completed my final cosmetology class. Now, I only need to complete 10 hours of practical work for certification. I'm planning to offer 10 customers a free makeover with any cosmetics purchase. That should fulfill the requirement and generate additional revenue. I could use some help updating my look. Maybe I'll return when you have availability and try to be one of the lucky 10, Mom responded. "As a matter of fact, I have time right now, if you'd like. And for my two favorite people, I'll not only provide free makeovers, but I'll also offer a 2-for-1 deal on all your makeup," Betty offered generously. "Betty, that's very kind of you. What do you think, Jonas? We don't have any other plans for tonight, do we?" Mom asked casually, adjusting an imaginary strand of hair above my ear. I had been so engrossed in admiring my new hairstyle in the mirror that I hadn't fully processed her suggestion. Was she actually proposing that I get my makeup done alongside her? Glancing at Betty, I noticed her knowing smile. After our previous escapade, I couldn't pretend disinterest in makeup. Moreover, it was Mom suggesting it. Did she genuinely want me to undergo a real makeover? I swallowed hard, attempting to remain non-committal. I can't think of anything we had planned." Both women beamed with delight. Mom squeezed my hand affectionately as Betty led us to her makeup table. Despite my half-hearted protest, they decided I should go first. Betty draped one of her pink smocks around my neck and pinned back the tendrils of hair from my face. "We'll start with the eyebrows, they help frame the face and define our overall look. Liz, to expedite, we'll each work on a side. You take these tweezers and mimic what I'm doing over here on the left." I hadn't anticipated getting my eyebrows shaped, assuming they'd only tidy up a few stray hairs. However, as they continued plucking, my concern grew. Betty started with a little, and Mom followed suit. But they persisted, with Betty justifying that it needed to be even. When they finally finished and stepped back to assess, I was taken aback. Where my once full eyebrows had been, there were now two thin, arched lines above my eyes. It seemed to transform my face entirely, and I was hit with the thrilling yet daunting realization that I had unmistakably crossed a threshold. Without a touch of makeup, I now sported a distinctly feminine face. Suddenly, I wasn't worried about passing as a girl. I probably couldn't even pass as a boy until my eyebrows grew back. Though I should have been outraged or at least protested, I was too stunned. Moreover, a part of me was genuinely thrilled by the transformation reflected in the mirror. Mom and Betty appeared oblivious to my astonishment, not bothering to inquire about my thoughts. Betty carefully applied a pencil to what remained of my eyebrows. For daytime, especially for Jonas, we'll keep the makeup quite conservative. But let's go all out with a full nighttime makeover for both of you, then you'll see the full impact of the colors we've chosen. Without awaiting our response, Betty proceeded to line both my upper and lower lids with a dark brown shade, extending the lines outward in a delta shape. They deliberated over the eyeshadow colors, engaging me in the discussion as if it were the most natural thing. Attempting to maintain the mood, I voiced some preferences, but with every glance at the mirror, my anxiety intensified. With each stroke of the makeup brushes, I transformed into a different person, a remarkably pretty one. They layered 3 shades of eyeshadow onto my eyelids, followed by a cream blush on my cheeks and a red pencil and brush on my lips. By the time they finished applying my lipstick, I felt breathless. Leaning back to present me with a full view in the mirror, they inquired about my opinion. In truth, the reflection was beautiful, but how could that strikingly feminine face belong to me? I hesitated for a moment, touching my face to confirm its reality. Finally, I offered a comment that veiled my true feelings. Perhaps a slightly lighter shade of lipstick, what do you think? Betty agreed, so I removed the lipstick with a tissue, and Betty reapplied it. Removing the hairpins from the tendrils, Betty readjusted them over my forehead, and the two women spent several minutes admiring their work and showering me with compliments. Too captivated by my own reflection to respond, I redirected the attention to Mom. Your turn, Mom, and this time I get to assist Betty. That seemed to suffice, and soon we were joyfully selecting colors for Mom's eyes and lips. I was surprised that they considered some of my suggestions on colors and shades, and it appeared to make a difference. When we finished, Mom looked rejuvenated. It had been a while since I had complimented her, and when I told her how beautiful she looked, she became emotional, giving me a heartfelt hug. You look beautiful too, sweetheart, she whispered sincerely. Instead of feeling appalled or offended, I found myself pleased. My appearance seemed to influence all my reactions. Betty neatly packed all our samples into 2 small zippered cosmetics bags, then totaled the additional lipsticks and shadows Mom had purchased. I couldn't help but notice that some of the colors seemed more suited to me than to her. What did that imply, exactly? Or perhaps she simply liked them enough to consider trying them herself. Expressing our gratitude to Betty, we headed out to the car. In the dimness of the late evening, I hadn't thought much about my appearance until Mom suggested stopping at a drive-in for dinner. Mom, I can't go out like this. What if someone sees me? What would people say? As I spoke, memories of my outing with Betty a few days earlier flooded back. The excitement returned, but that had been with Betty, not with my own mother. My dear, at a drive-in, people will only notice your face and the top of your shirt. Looking as lovely as you do now, the only attention you'll draw will be as a very pretty young lady. And as for encountering any of the snobs from your school, I doubt they'd notice anyone but themselves. But if you feel even the slightest bit uncomfortable, we'll leave right away, I promise. Her reassurance eased my nerves, allowing excitement to take over. What did I have to lose? What can I get you ladies tonight? The cheerful greeting brought a sense of relief and a little thrill. At least the car hop had no confusion about my appearance. We placed our orders and the guy departed. How are you feeling? Mom inquired. Pretty good, I guess. We certainly fooled him. I think you'll find that's a common experience. But not to change the subject, you were right about the lipstick. That shade suits you perfectly, even under these neon lights. I blushed, trying to think of a casual response, but she continued, "And you were right about my eyeshadow too. You seem to have a real knack for this sort of thing." I knew she was teasing now. "Oh, come on, Mom." "I'm not teasing, sweetheart, I'm serious," and Betty said the same thing. "Some people just have an eye for colors and textures, and you're one of them. It's a talent you possess. And speaking of which, you seem to be mastering hairstyling quite well too. It's almost professional level work you're doing." Her sincerity both pleased and embarrassed me. "Ah, thanks, Mom. I suppose Betty's a great teacher, she makes everything so easy and enjoyable." "Well, she mentioned that you've been an excellent student. By the way, I found another magazine tonight with some great hairstyles. Would you like to browse through it while we wait for our food?" We spent the next several minutes browsing through the magazine, exchanging thoughts on hairstyles and makeup. At some point, I realized I was genuinely interested in these topics and seemed to have a natural aptitude for them. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, even as we enjoyed our meal. I felt a surge of excitement when I noticed traces of lipstick on my straw and napkin, mirroring Mom's. After we finished eating, Mom dabbed her lips and then retrieved a fresh tube of lipstick. I observed with fascination as she carefully applied the color using a compact mirror. Catching my gaze, she motioned toward my makeup bag. "Go ahead, dear, your makeup could use a touch-up too." As she spoke, she adjusted the rearview mirror so that I could see my reflection. It was a moment charged with excitement for me. I picked out a tube from my makeup bag and uncapped it. As I twisted the base, I gazed into the mirror, then brought the tube to my lips. With that rich, aromatic flavor enveloping my senses for the fourth time, I realized I wanted to experience this sensation all the time. I adored the scent, the taste, and the silky smooth texture of the lipstick, and I reveled in the vibrant color on my lips. Mom seemed to sense the emotions stirring within me, and she offered a warm smile and a quick hug. "It's rather enjoyable, isn't it?" In that moment, all my reservations vanished. I smiled at her and nodded in affirmation. However, as I glanced at my reflection once more, I abruptly froze. A car pulled into the space beside ours, and to my dismay, Quinn was behind the wheel with Geminifer in the passenger seat. I lowered myself as far as possible in my seat, urging Mom to leave immediately. Luckily, the car hop had just arrived to collect the tray, prompting Mom to swiftly start the engine and exit the parking lot. In my hunched position, I couldn't ascertain whether Quinn and Geminifer had spotted me, and I didn't dare to raise my head to check. How foolish had I been? They were likely the only two girls in town who had shown me any kindness, and now that could all be jeopardized. Moreover, those girls weren't known for their discretion. This news could spread throughout town rapidly, shattering any hope I had for a semblance of normalcy. I felt a mixture of disgust toward myself and anger toward Mom for putting me in this situation. Mom attempted to initiate conversation a few times while driving, but I remained silent. Suddenly, she veered to the side of the road and switched off the engine. "Listen, Jonas," she began, swiveling in her seat to address me directly, "I understand you're upset, but I believe it's important to address a few matters openly. Firstly, you should know that I've been aware of your curiosity about my lingerie for quite some time." My jaw must have plummeted. How could she have possibly known? Had I overlooked something, or had she caught me in the act? It had been months, well, at least weeks, since I had, well, aside from this week, of course. What repercussions awaited me? "Now, don't be alarmed. I'm not upset with you or anything," she reassured me. "As I mentioned, I've been aware of it for quite some time, but I assumed if I confronted you, you'd simply deny it. Am I correct?" I glanced at the floor and nodded silently. In any case, I consulted my counselor about it. I was on the verge of collapsing. She had disclosed this to other individuals, particularly that eccentric counselor she referred to. And she mentioned that it's not uncommon for a boy to harbor an interest in feminine things. Admittedly, it's not the most prevalent occurrence, but you're far from alone in experiencing these emotions. Anyway, Betty and I discussed it extensively. Then, a wave of nausea swept over me suddenly. Betty was aware of my inclinations, but then, her behavior seemed to, it all clicked into place. Hold on, Mother. Are you saying you orchestrated this? You, Betty, and your peculiar counselor set me up. Take a breath, dear. Regarding Dr. Harris, I haven't had much opportunity to converse with her since our move, but yes, Betty and I did indeed orchestrate this as a, well, let's call it an experiment. We wanted to gauge your willingness to embrace certain aspects. Frankly, I was quite convinced you wouldn't have consented or acknowledged anything if we hadn't concocted this little incentive. But be honest, hasn't it been somewhat enjoyable? Enjoyable? I exclaimed. Mom raised her hand, our signal for me to lower my voice and carefully consider my words. I swallowed my retort and simply glared at her for a moment. How could she have deceived me like this? Then, I began to reflect on last week's outing with Betty, the recent conversations with Mom, and tonight's salon session. I reluctantly admitted to myself that I had been finding pleasure in these experiences. There was a sense of tranquility, even camaraderie, that I hadn't felt in ages, perhaps ever. It was all terribly perplexing. On one hand, I felt intense shame for my actions, and I knew I should be furious with Mom for her scheming. On the other hand, I couldn't deny the enjoyment and bond one was forming with Betty and Mom, and I was desperate not to lose that connection. Suddenly, I broke down into tears, hiding my face in my hands. Mom embraced me, offering comfort and support as I wept. She held me close, soothing me with her words and touch until I regained some composure. Eventually, she handed me tissues to wipe away my tears and blow my nose. As I composed myself, she began to speak. I understand how challenging this is for you, sweetheart. It's equally difficult for me. But I believe this could be a significant and fulfilling time for both of us. Your feelings are now out in the open, and I need to express mine as well. When I first began to suspect your inclinations, I was deeply concerned. However, after much contemplation, research, and discussions with Betty and Dr. Harris, I now see potential for positive exploration. Suddenly, I experienced a different sensation, one that wasn't rooted in shame or confusion. Looking up at my mom, I found her smiling at me. Our time at Betty's tonight, and your recent outing with her, yes, she filled me in on all the details. It's evident that you have a genuine interest in feminine pursuits. Am I correct? She inquired. Swallowing hard, I nodded. Throughout these past few days, we've had such enjoyable moments. Seeing you tonight, so beautifully styled with your hair and makeup done, it's clear to me that you possess immense potential. If you're inclined to explore this aspect of yourself, darling, I want to be there to support you. Can we share in this journey together? I wasn't entirely sure of her exact meaning, but hearing her express it felt reassuring. Mom, I'm not entirely certain about what all this means or what I truly want, but knowing that you're willing to help me, I'm just so overwhelmed. I struggled to find the right words, but my mom intervened. I understand you're grappling with a lot of emotions, and I'm here to assist you in navigating through them. I'm always available if you need someone to talk to. However, why not enjoy ourselves along the way? Whenever you feel like enhancing your appearance, be it with hair, clothing, or makeup, let's indulge in it together. We have the entire summer at our disposal, and as far as I can tell, it won't be causing any harm. It would bring me immense joy to share in some girl things with you. Plus, she chuckled, I've always thought you were too adorable to fit the mold of just another guy. With these words, she enveloped me in another warm embrace, and we shared a moment of laughter. Glancing into her eyes, I noticed tears glistening, mirroring my own. We attempted to wipe away each other's mascara-streaked tears, only succeeding in laughing and crying simultaneously. During the remainder of our journey home, we discussed what we would do if Geminifer and Quinn had indeed seen me. Mom suggested that if they were genuine friends, matters would resolve themselves naturally. If not, we would face any repercussions or rumors together. It felt incredibly comforting to confide in Mom about everything. From that moment onward, I resolved to be completely honest and forthcoming with all my emotions. When we got home, Mom told me to go and change into my robe, then we'd meet in her bedroom to clean off the rest of our makeup. I began to step into my pajamas, then caught myself. I quickly put my PJs back in my drawer and took the nightie from under my pillow. It was time for the first big test of our new openness. Taking a few deep breaths for courage, I put my robe over my arm and Mom didn't seem to hesitate at all as a smile played across her lips. I thought I was missing something out of my drawers. You look very nice in that, sweetheart, even if it is a little old and worn. Tomorrow during lunch I could buy you a nightgown of your own if you like. A little thrill passes through me as I nodded my head. With that, Mom had me sit beside her at her vanity and she showed me how to use her special creams to remove the makeup and moisturize my face. She combed out my hair and helped me put it up for the night, then I did the same for her. It was one of the best nights of my life.